Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. A very happy new year to you. Welcome to our show, Ghosts Are Near, where we discuss various aspects of the paranormal and paranormal research and investigation. I am your host, Keith Johnson, the founder of New England Anomalies Research. With me is my co-host and co-founder, Sandra Johnson.
Hello there. I was really ready for the show. I was just doodling.
We know, Sandra, we know. I'd like to say a special hello to our friend Jack, who is a manager at BK, Jack and his wife. And of course, Keith Jr., our son, is addicted to BK. So.
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Jack and Mrs. Jack.
And Mrs. Jack.
Also, we received recently some very special gifts, just today, in fact. These are from our friend David Scott, who is a demonologist and exorcist, and also a very dear friend. And these are handmade crosses. They've been blessed. And we can actually use these in deliverance services. We go in to do house cleansings, and these will...
Absolutely.
Yeah, these will be very treasured, and we'd like to thank you, David, very, very much.
Yeah, I particularly like the letter that he sent with them, denoting all of the different pieces.
Right.
How each of them has...
The nails symbolizing the crucifixion, of course, and the wire, the crown of thorns, and the whip. So everything in the cord, everything means something. So very, very special, handmade.
Yeah, thank you for that gift. That was,
yes.
That was really thoughtful.
Very much appreciated.
Surprise.
And we have a return visit from a very special guest, Dan Gordon. We're so glad to have you back. And let me give you a little bit of an introduction. Dan Gordon first experienced the magic of Fenway in the summer of 1975 when his father took him to his first game. With a Thomas J. Watson Fellowship, Gordon studied global baseball culture in Japan, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, and Nicaragua. You've been around.
Really?
His writings on baseball have appeared in numerous publications, including the Providence Journal and Fort Worth Star, and he is the author of Cape Encounters, Contemporary Cape Cod Ghost Stories. He lives and dies with the Red Sox. And of course, you're the author of Haunted Baseball, which we discussed last time. Well, Dan and his co-author, Mickey Bradley, have been at it again. This time, Field of Screams. I love that title, Field of Screams. Haunted tales from the baseball diamond, the locker room, and beyond.
There are still more haunted baseball stories to tell.
It's like it never ends. And this is fascinating. I mean, this book, I can say truly, it is really captivating. And we have a lot of questions for you about this, Dan.
Sure.
Sandra, you can begin. Because
Well,
I know you have lots and lots of questions yourself.
And I asked them all just before the show.
Because we've been reading it and comparing notes, and it's like really, yeah.
How about getting this information out of the players and managers? Is it like pulling teeth? Are they willing to tell their stories? Are they embarrassed? Or are they afraid to admit that they believe in ghosts and these superstitions and whatnot?
I'd be like, hi there. You know?
It's a little intimidating kind of walking up to David Ortiz or some great player, you know, especially, you know, having grown up a huge, you know, baseball fan. But, you know, actually, I mean, for them, the question's very disarming, you know, and because they talk about ghosts all the time, you know, at their lockers or on the team buses, you know, and it goes as far as even doing lots of pranks, you know, involving, you know, making younger players believe their room is haunted. So, which we had a chapter in.
On the rookies.
Yeah, but you know, but they actually believe. So, I mean, there are tons of stories, and they're very comfortable sharing them. I mean, and you know, with swarms of reporters, you know, going around looking for the latest controversy, you know, or trying to elaborate on one. You know, it's kind of refreshing for them to get, you know, to talk about something that is of great interest to them and is part of their life as players.
Yeah, I understand, you know, sports people, for the most part, have all these superstitions and all of these sort of rituals that they do and everything. It's just trying to get, I wondered, you know, how hard it would be, you know, to get this stuff actually out of them and into print, but I guess they want to talk about it, which is good for you and good for us.
Yes. One thing, when I'm reading this, I can actually picture the players and the managers actually saying these things, because you have a lot of quotes, and it's like, I picture you being right there with them, talking with them, and...
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's something that we wanted to do is, we wanted it from their perspective. I mean, they are stories. I mean, a lot of these were stories that you can't find in, in the research archives. A lot of it the media hasn't reported on, but yet these players, have these great stories, and it's part of the color of the game, and it's part of their lives. I mean, they truly are terrified going into certain hotels, or, they have these feelings of, that the ghosts are in Yankee Stadium or in Dodger Stadium, and they believe in certain curses and things. So,
Oh, yeah.
So it's.
Yeah, and there were actually a couple of hotels that you wrote about in the book that I had actually never heard of as a paranormal investigator. We know of a lot of the different hotels that are haunted, but I hadn't actually.
Bellevue, of course, we know that.
Yeah, I hadn't actually heard of the Pfister in Milwaukee and the Lackawanna Station Hotel in Scranton. Can you sort of give us, from the player's point of view, what went on in these two locations?
The Pfister is kind of like the Vinoy that we covered in our prior book, Haunted Baseball, but Pfister is one of these hotels that probably the top two most haunted hotels in baseball. I mean, it's something that players, for many teams many teams have stories from there. The LA Dodgers changed hotels after the 2000 season, because Adrian Beltre and Eric Gagne and a few players all swore that there, something happening in their room, like pounding noises on the walls and feeling like someone was walking by them. One coach, John Shelby, thought that, when he put his head on the pillow, he heard a sigh, like right on his ear, and felt, heard it again a few times. And, the stories just go on and on. Various, literally, hundreds of players, either have a firsthand or a team story from that hotel. And in the Lackawanna Hotel, probably even more so. That's in a AAA hotel in, here local in Rhode Island. The Pawtucket Red Sox, several players have had experiences there.
That's what I like, the local stories.
Yeah, and but certainly it's just very famous, and the stories are really wild there. Anything from apparitions like waking up to somebody lying in bed with you.
Yeah, that's pretty disconcerting.
Yeah, especially for players that have to play a game the next day.
Right, they have to concentrate.
Yeah. And one of the most famous stories there is of a few players, and we interviewed all of them. A couple of them we interviewed in the Pawtucket clubhouse, but one of them I actually interviewed in Japan because he was over there then. Saw a teenager spin his head around like 180 degrees. Wow. Kind of like The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that's what you think of when you
right.
mention that.
Yeah, and so it's some really bizarre tales, and it's kind of interesting to gain their perspective on it. They're all terrified, and yet the teams still continue to stay there year after year.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe that's one of their good luck rituals. Maybe they figure if they change, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Their winning streak is going to end. But the Pfister Hotel in Milwaukee and the Lackawanna Station Hotel in Scranton, Pennsylvania, paranormal investigators take note of those locations.
Let's book a room.
The chapter, and I was telling you this before the show, that I liked the most was The Land of the Rising Dead, the chapter around the Oriental happenings, the players that are from that area and
Sure.
Traveling through there. Now, not being the biggest baseball fan on the planet, I wasn't really aware of the players, how they're different from the American players, specifically the Japanese, their reverence for the field. They bow before they go onto the field, and bow before they leave.
Even
they
bottom of
don't.
the plate. And
Yeah, they don't spit
yeah.
on the field.
Right.
How do the American players survive there? What do they do?
Well, they're corrected very quickly. I remember one player telling us that, his name, Jeff Leafer, he played for the White Sox briefly. He was over there, and he said that he was chewed out after he walked across the team insignia on the field, because that was disrespecting the field. But I mean, it's part of the field. It's right in the, batting area.
Right.
So that kind of thing, yeah. And Japanese players are quite shocked when they come over here. Hideki Matsui
Yeah,
was
I bet.
telling us that, about, when someone player like touches your glove, it's kind of offensive to,
Yeah, I even wrote that down. It was the bats and the gloves are considered an extension of themselves, the
Yeah.
players.
Yeah.
And I read about one player. He had to sleep with his bat to sort of make amends with it because he had thrown it or something.
Yeah, it's Ichiro. He's probably the most famous Japanese player. He did that, early in his career, and he actually has a humidor for his things. I mean, a lot of players you see them with special equipment for carrying the equipment, and it's kind of part of the Shinto belief that that tools are contained that you've had around for a long time actually contain spirit.
Contain a spirit, yeah.
and-
Well, that's, of course, how they felt. The samurai sword, of course, was
Yeah,
an extension
exactly.
for you. It had its own spirit, and, that's where their basic respect comes from for the game and for their lifestyle in general. And they use, of course, salt. They use salt to do a lot of purification.
Yeah.
And you mentioned in the book that some Americans have adopted that as well.
Yeah. I mean, especially guys that are there a long time, and Tuffy Rhodes, who actually also played at McCoy Stadium in Pawtucket, and with the Red Sox. When he went over there, at first he was shocked, but then he started carrying around the charms that they carry, and he would put the Butsuso, probably mispronouncing that, Buddha statues on the dugout steps to, again, ward off evil spirits, and he did a lot of that, and that's part
When
of
in
the
Rome,
game.
whatever works.
Right, exactly.
I mean, the players. I mean, it's part. The reason they do that is because they believe the spirits are definitely there, and the Japanese baseball is rampant with ghost stories, and certainly.
And superstitions. I like the other story too about the KFC Colonel.
Yeah.
I know we're not supposed to talk about use the brand names and stuff, but I can't
That's a
describe it
famous
any
one. Yeah.
better than that.
Yeah. The Curse of Colonel Sanders. In 1985, when the Hanshin Tigers won the Japanese championship, the fans who are in Osaka, Japan, are very known for their being very boisterous. They had all the different people, and they all gathered to celebrate in the streets near a river, and they had fans who looked like a certain player jump into the river. And one of the players was Japanese players on that team was an American guy, big burly guy named Randy Bass, and he had a long beard and everything. And of course, they couldn't find someone from Japan who had blonde hair and was like a Oklahoma farm boy. And so so they.
So they got Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, exactly. And they threw him in, and a curse was born.
Wow.
They haven't won since, and they actually a year ago it was like. They actually found the statue. It took them that long to find it.
In pieces, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Piece here and a piece there.
So they thought maybe that would do it, but they actually lost in the championship this year, and then some think because they couldn't find his spectacles or one of his arms.
They couldn't find
Wow.
a couple of pieces.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at that statue at the local KFC yesterday. I'm sitting there. Think twice next time.
Yeah, and the other one about the South Korean team players, they seem to be just about, they're really out there with their superstitions.
Yeah.
I was reading about the team players, the ritual that they have.
Mm-hmm.
They put a table at home plate and they get a pig's head and they skin it and have rice and wine and pour the wine around the field and
Yeah.
money in the pig's ears and head.
Yeah, it's a long time ritual to Doosan beers, and heard about it from several players, so I knew it wasn't somebody pulling my leg. I mean, it's something they do, and it's that's more of a Buddhist thing, especially with the rice wine and the rice, and similar to the salt, kind of the team purification and blessing the team. And they do that ritual at the start of the season, and I mean, in Japan, also, I mean, just like there are a lot of rituals.
It's very different there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We don't do too much with pigs' heads in this country that I know
Well,
of.
that depends. I know a lot of other stories. I'm sure our studio audience does too, but we've all learned about that.
Yeah, there's that head cheese stuff that I keep
Yeah,
seeing
right,
on the
exactly.
Travel Channel.
Yeah. Actually, we're going to take a brief commercial break right now, and when we come back, we will have more questions and fascinating answers with Dan Gordon, Field of Screams. We'll be back. Now, what I'm attempting to do here is to induce, hopefully, some paranormal activity by recreating the scenes that took place here. This is known as the Singapore effect. This is often spoken about by my friend Barry Fitzgerald. So what I'm going to do now is run the bases and see what happens. Around the bases! Around the bases! Now we'll see if anything happens.
Have you flipped your lid, Dad? Have you flipped your lid, Dad?
No, what I'm trying to do is recreate paranormal activity here. The Singapore effect.
Well, nothing's happening here. Let's go home.
I guess you're right, Keith. We can go home now.
The Singapore effect.
Yes. Well, sometimes the activity happens and sometimes it doesn't. But we are back with Dan Gordon, and we have a lot of more questions for you, Dan. Go ahead, Sandra.
I actually want you to explain, if you can, how the 2008 Cubs season began with a seance and ended with an exorcism.
Loaded question.
Well, every Cubs season ends with some kind of nightmare. So, the Cubs have the famous Billy Goat curse, and the idea that
Right.
a tavern keeper cursed the team because his goat and he and his goat were ejected from the.
I remember.
Yeah. And every year they try to do, recently they've tried to do some kind of rituals, and actually that year in 2008, before the season, somebody actually threw the carcass of a decapitated goat on Harry Carey, the famous announcer's statue, and they've, so they do some really wild stuff. But 1908 was the last time the Cubs won the World Series. So, 2008 they actually had this ritual to, a seance. It was started by a reporter, I believe, for the Chicago Sun-Times, and they brought in a spiritualist, and they tried to communicate with the spirit of Billy Georgeous.
Yeah, it was a channeler named Rick Christianat.
Right.
He has a spirit guide named Running Deer, who is his sort of liaison to the spirit world.
Yeah, and they kind of, did it a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but a little bit not. I mean, Billy Georgeous was actually a Cubs player who was shot by his mistress in a hotel room in Chicago, and he was also well known for being one of the theories for Babe Ruth's called shot, the famous home run that Babe pointed to, and then actually hit the home run against the Cubs.
Right.
And they actually believe there were a number. They actually believe they did communicate with the spirit. That there were a number of things that they, through Rick that they actually learned. Things that they thought there was no way he could know that. Anything from, learning, from finding that someone had been carrying a lightning bolt to other things. Anyway, it was a lot of eerie.
Yeah, it's in your book you mentioned that he was channeling the spirit of Billy Georgeous. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. 1932 Cubs shortstop who had been killed by his girlfriend, shot by his girlfriend.
Yeah, shot. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
He actually survived. He was hit in the buttocks and the arm. But he got it. That's who they communicated with. So it was kind of a. That was, another wild thing that, in Cubs lore. But at the end of the season, they actually brought in the team president, Craig Kenny, actually called up the Cubs had actually made the playoffs that year. So they thought maybe this is the year, and they brought in a Greek Orthodox priest, and he went in and he started sprinkling water in the clubhouse, and it got caught on national cameras, which is exactly what they wasn't supposed to happen. He was supposed to actually sprinkle it all over the field, and it ended up they ended up quitting early because obviously they were afraid of the national press. Now we interviewed Father Jim Greenius, and he actually said it wasn't an exorcism, or it was more of a blessing, and he was a huge
to clear any
exactly.
curses that might be hanging around.
And to protect the players too. And
I don't think the media makes that distinction sometimes.
Right,
They'll
exactly.
go for what seems to be what seems will sell papers, and blessing and exorcism. I think one will sell papers and the other might not.
Sure.
I think it's a good idea anyway, whatever one's faith might be, to do some sort of spiritual protection beforehand. Obviously a whole unseen realm out there, and it can't hurt.
Yeah. I mean, baseball's if nothing else, it's a dangerous game too. So
Right.
So a lot of these rituals that players do, sometimes they're just to protect their health, and
What I thought was kind of sad was after all of that, he apparently later on there was a fan convention, and the chairman who had originally asked the priest in to do the blessing was claiming that it was the other way around, that the priest had contacted him in order to get in and to have free tickets to the games and things like that. I thought that was kind of sad.
Yeah, it was a dangerous thing to get involved with baseball superstition, because everyone's always trying to protect themselves, and once it becomes
nobody wants bad press.
Yeah. So it was an interesting event, and the Cubs lost that year, of course, and still haven't won.
Well, are there any other haunting stories that you would like to talk about? Those were the ones that really kind of stuck out at me.
Along those lines.
The gnome. We want to talk
Yes,
about
the gnome. Yes, tell us about the gnome.
Every team. One of the reasons we wrote Field of Screams was, continued writing was just because these new stories keep appearing every year. Mm-hmm. And in 2009, the Dodgers, it started with the bullpen, and bullpens in general are very superstitious. We have a thing about the Red Sox and having a stuffed parrot in their bullpen in 2007. But the Dodgers bullpen had a garden gnome, and they would touch it before they'd go out and take the mound, and pitchers started doing better. And the hitters, Russell Martin, the catcher at that time for the Dodgers, he heard about it, so they brought one into the dugout. The team went on an 8-game winning streak, and so even some of the skeptics on the team would, touch the gnome anyway, because they,
touch the gnome.
Yeah, I heard I remember reading that it sort of got them out of a slump, and then after that, it didn't seem to work so well.
Yeah, that's the way these things work. I mean, we got several, you know, we have a whole chapter on charms and various things that teams do, including the Yankees having women's undergarments that they were wearing for a while to kind of break out of personal hitting slumps. So, you know, there are a lot of these things.
Didn't one of them have a baby turkey,
Yeah.
turkey chick?
Yeah, the Baltimore Orioles.
A fan had given them?
Exactly, yeah, it was a baby turkey. The Orioles got it on the road when they were in Milwaukee. Dyer Miller, the pitcher, got it in the shoebox, and you know he didn't know what to do with it. So I mean, he took it with him, and they put it in the clubhouse, and the team started winning. So Earl Weaver, the manager at the time, just you know, let's keep it around. So it was around the whole season.
There's even a lot of mascot superstition and competition, fierce competition.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to get in the middle of it. But you've, of course, you know, interviewed Babe Ruth's granddaughter, Linda, and, you know, extensively. And she's plays a big part in a lot of the stories here. It's fascinating how she feels that she's guided and is never alone. And she has dreams of her grandfather, who she never met in life. She was about... wasn't it? She was about 7 years old when she died. She was born 7 years after he died, I believe, right? Yeah. And, but she does feel a closeness with him, and she's guided. And she had a terror of speaking at the Hall of Fame, but I guess you know she felt comforted on the way there. And
Yeah.
those are fascinating examples of that. That his spirit kind of goes on, you know, even if it's just in our hearts and. In our minds and our memories, and he was quite a character, Babe Ruth, quite a flamboyant character.
He was. It was my favorite chapter to write, the Japanese one too, because it kind of had a personal connection to it. But Babe Ruth chapter, I mean, just the more you learn about the man, the more fascinating he is, and just to you know, Linda Ruth Tussetti, Babe Ruth's granddaughter, was wonderful to get to know, and she, you know, was very enlightening. You just learn little things about the Babe you didn't know about his time as barnstorming in the, you know, in the Negro Leagues in the South, you know, at a time when, you know, that wasn't acceptable to do. But also just some of the, you know, eerie things that she experienced, as you mentioned, and you know, mystical things, and belief that, you know, the Babe, you know, strange coincidences like her conjuring the spirit of the Babe during the 2004 ALCS when David Ortiz was at bat, and then Ortiz hits a home run, that kind of thing. But you know, we also, you know, as you mentioned, his spirit is so prevalent in, you know, his character, and whether it's his memory or whatnot, or actual ghosts. But a lot of people believe that they are encountering his ghost at various settings where he grew up and played, and even some of the, you know, hotels and ball fields where he's been. So.
Right. Well, before we conclude our show, I would like to ask you, what have you personally experienced in your research, in interviewing these players, and being in all these famous locations, hotels and ballparks? Have you been touched by this or personally experienced anything that you would consider paranormal?
Not directly. I mean, in you know, it's, I kind of almost wish I could, but I mean, I felt it, you know, you do feel the history in the old ballparks, and I did have a kind of a funny experience in a hotel room when I was flying to LA. I got snowbound in Charlotte for the connecting flight, and I had to stay overnight. And you know, all the time we hear stories from players in the hotels. One of the most common stories is, I don't remember latching the door in the hotel, and it was bolted shut. You know, that kind of thing you hear, or the door was open, and that happened to me when I was in a hotel in Charlotte, and I kind of, you know, went in the room, and I turned around and the door was latched shut, and then the curtains were open and that kind of thing. You know, so I think that, you know, I don't know what it was, and may have just been tiredness, but I could have sworn that it wasn't. So,
at least you weren't locked in.
Yeah, but it did remind me a lot of, you know, I could identify even better with what the players are talking about.
Well, I think we're all out of time. Our credits have already run, so
All right,
cut that last part in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have you on again.
Oh,
Dan
thank you.
Gordon.
Next book.
Yeah.